I worked a prison in a remote area in southern Iraq miles from Kasr. At the time I was there it detained 30k prisoners and an additional 3k that no one except people working there knew about. They'd put us in blacked out window commercial buses and drive us an hour away for days at a time to guard the facilities. We were never allowed to speak with anyone on the main prison fob and forbidden to tell anyone about it. We referred to it only as Jurassic Park, one of the black prisons run by contractor medical personnel. The facility itself was a facade of mud/brick buildings resembling a small village. The place was complete with villagers, us, dressed up in man dresses and a small area for goats on the outskirts. From a distance it looked legit, but up close you could see the bulges from our combat gear underneath the clothing. All of us there were picked for our darker complexion and allowed to grow facial hair. You also had to be military police with TS and PRP or Yankee white clearance. I couldn't see Kasra from the facility, so I have no idea where we were, just that we were in the middle of nowhere. We had to park the gun trucks and buses away from the area and use netting to cover them. The trucks were manned by a PMC, so they looked like civilian vehicles beside being armored variations of normal vehicles. Usually a small fire team would be tasked with security and a TERP. The rest of us had to put the clothing on and start a small patrol to relieve the other guards. In late 2007 we were woken up early and recalled to go the facility 3 days earlier than our normal rotation. We bitched, got ready and headed out to get in the buses. This time around we arrived to a lot full of newer up armored Humvees, told to STFU and get in. There were already drivers in each truck and off we went. The drivers drove in a tight group, which is unusual for convoy ops. They also didn't talk to us the entire ride. It's pitch black out and all you can see is blackness, but this is the first time we were allowed to see where we were going because the Humvee windows weren't blacked out like the buses. I'm trying to orient myself but can't see much beside the little red lights of the vehicle in front of mine. The windows are thick armored glass, so it's impossible to see anything in the nighttime desert with no illumination beside the convoys. We drive for a little over an hour and you can see a faint glow in the distance. We start to get closer and it's the facility that's on fire. The LT comes over our comms and relays that anyone not wearing American DCU pattern MOP 4 is to be eliminated via deadly force. None of us are wearing MOPP gear. The drivers stop the vehicles and we're told to dismount and rally around a group of LMTVs that are waiting for us. They start calling out SSI numbers and handing out mopping gear that is already our sizes. My WTF is going off hard. NCOs come around and tell us to gear up. We start putting our mop gear and are abruptly told to stop and strip back down to our regular uniforms and take out our military ID cards, driver license, and any other form of photo identification on our person or gear. Little teams of PMC, private military contractor i.e. Blackwater etc., start collecting and searching us. One guy would cut away our name tape, military branch tape and unit patches. Once they finished, another team of them would come by and try to find anything the first one missed. Lastly, our NCOs did the same thing to see if the first two missed anything. Officers start rallying up our NCOs for the op order, operations order, tells them what the plan is, and the rest of us are told to rally back up around another set of LMTVs, armored supply trucks like a newer Deuce and a half, and start unloading boxes filled with ammo, magazines, and newer NVGs than the ones we already had in our gear. These ones had a rail system that attached in behind our optics so we could wear a gas mask and still shoot and see in the dark. We're told to load as many magazines as possible and put the spares in our 3-day assault packs, fancy military for backpack. We already carried a basic load of 210 rounds and M9 pistols with 45 rounds in our ammo pouches on our EBAs, individual body armor. We're taken over to another area to zero our weapons at a makeshift little range made of HESCO blast barriers. With my NVGs I can see that there is a security perimeter around us made up of PMCs. We shoot, zero, then rally back up to hear what the plan is. We are to provide personal security for a team of contractors and are to follow any and all direction from contractors unless it's basic combat tactical decisions. We start forming up into squads, 12 people, then break down into fire teams, about 4 people, and designate who will stay with the contractor, who will provide external security, and who will be clearing rooms. We then are briefed via rock drills, literally a fucking map made up of rocks and lines in dirt, for which squads will assault at what entry points or defend entry points. We're leaving in platoon size, about 5 squads, and the rest of our normal security detail will provide overwatch with heavy weapons/marksmen on the external perimeter once we start to systematically clear the village/underlying prison facility. After all that, a team of 3 contractors wearing those pressurized suits that push air outward when it rips join my fire team. I want to say they had DuPont logos on the suit itself, but we start to move toward our objective. The patrol there goes smoothly and we set up a perimeter and recon the area. Only a few buildings are still smoldering. The fire itself had gone out during all the BS of just gearing up. A majority of the village is intact. There are also bodies strewn about, but with the gas masks and only night vision it's hard to make out if they are insurgents or the guys we normally relieved wearing local clothing. There is a small IR beacon, infrared, flashing at the base of one of the larger buildings and wants our team to shift to cover/clear that building. Plans are adjusted and the assault begins. It is damn near impossible to move with all mop suit on. That combined with sweat pooling in my mask and low visibility is making something relatively complicated in itself even more difficult. Fire teams make progress to their respective areas. Our building is on the opposite side of the town, so it takes us a minute to get there. We bound and take positions, making it even more tedious as we move. I'm running to take up the next position and each shit into the ground, landing on top of a body. The face is caved in and the gore gets all over my mask and suit. I notice he is armed with an M4, meaning he is American military, and there are shell casings and magazines strewn about his body. My guess is I lost footing when my foot hit the shell casings, and like marbles they made me slide and lose balance. The guy behind me bounds up and drags me up by my assault pack back up to my feet, and we continue. Small arms fire is going off sporadically but in controlled bursts, meaning that other teams are running into opposition but handling the situation. We arrive and stack up on our building and wait for the last team to get in place and set off 2 flashbangs to signal for all the building clearing teams to start. I'm covering my area of responsibility but can barely see shit with the sweat stinging my eyes and my inability to wipe it away because of the gas mask. The gunfire has quelled and the flashbangs echo throughout the village to signal the rest of us. I'm first in as leadman in my fire team. I'm having trouble seeing in the darkness and the fucking mask is making it worse. I swing my weapon up and clear my area of responsibility. The rest of the fire team follows. First room clear, so I stack back up on the next door and wait to feel the pat on my back to assault the next room. My eyes are stinging at this point and I really can't see shit. All I'm hoping is some prick doesn't get the drop on me and I get lit up. Feel the slap on my gear, shove open door. I swing right and see a silhouette in the comber. He first cowers away from the light coming from my surefire flashlight, then rebounds. I can't see if he has a weapon or not, but he starts to run toward me. Reach to squeeze the trigger, but the rubber from my mop gloves is caught on the trigger guard. Something so simple and quickly taken care of becomes an action long enough to get me killed. 2 shots go off and my ears are ringing. The third man in saw the threat and neutralized it. We start to stack on the next door after securing the assailant with flexi cuffs. Contractor comes in and tells us to stand by. Walks over and starts fucking with the dead body, but JPEG. Starts swabbing the mouth with Q-tips and prodding the body with other instruments. I can't really focus on what he is doing as I'm responsible not to get us killed if someone comes through the next door. The other 2 technicians come in and start consorting with the contractor. The head guy walks over to my fire team leader and tells us to stop clearing immediately and stand by. Contractor gets on his radio and starts relaying a message to his people. Sitting there waiting, letting whomever is waiting for us to get into position cause they know we're there now, and every minute wasted is a minute for them to prepare for our entry. I'm getting antsy thinking about it and want to keep moving but can't until I'm told. Contractor's radio goes back off and he mumbles something into it, then addresses my fire team leader. We are told that anyone inside the facility is to be considered hostile and don't try to identify weapons, just shoot. Okay, here come War Crimes Tribunal. MP4 contractor tells us to continue. Get to door, feel slap, rush in, room clear. This is the deepest into the building any of has ever been. There is one last door with a keypad and badge reader. There is a dead guard in the coma with boils on his exposed skin / black blood pooled around him and his clothing soaked through his clothes. The contractor follows us in when we secure the body. He repeats the process again but doesn't call it in again. We wait in the room for a minute and wait for other fire teams to finish their way up to their respective entrances. Waiting. Then one of our guys asks the contractor if we're supposed to shoot other American personnel. What a dumb question, I think, but then this prick looks at us and says, yes. Anyone in this facility regardless of affiliation. What the fuck, I can't even believe I'm hearing this shit. Had it been our rotation instead of those guards, then the higher ups would have just had us off too. With the downtime I'm starting to connect the dots. Something biological was in this place and now they are worried it will get out. My heart starts to race. I have blood on me. I'm wearing a shitty mop ensemble from some lowest bidder government contractor probably had made in fucking Puerto Rico. I'm starting to shake a little bit. My gas mask is starting to pulse on my face from the deep breaths I'm taking. I'm starting to freak out. How well did my buddy checks really check this fucking thing to make sure I'm sealed up right? I ask the contractor if I'm safe inside my mop gear. He responds yes nonchalantly. I yell at him that he has a fucking suit that looks it's out of the movie Outbreak and that's easy for him to say. My leader tells me to chill the fuck out. I proceed to chill the fuck out. Sort of radio goes back off. Other teams are ready. Contractor walks up to door and takes out restricted area badge, swipes it, then enters his pin. Door hisses loudly and retracts backwards with a hydraulic whir. Enter next room, sterile, one-way glass to my right, little corridor not really a room. Shove muzzle into one-way glass to break it in case someone is going to light me up from the other side. Muzzle makes contact and the solid glass doesn't even wobble. The shock hurts my wrist. Continue toward end of corridor, another keypad. Contractor does his thing. We assault into a long hallway with rooms on either side. Fucking room clearing nightmare. Contractor assures us all these doors are secure and walks ahead of us to a specific door. I can hear movement and voices inside the rooms, realize they are where the detainees are kept in cells. Contractor talks to leader. Contractor wants us to force cell extract the prisoner. We don't have any riot gear to do this, have to do it anyway. Stack up on door and he inputs a code to open it. Door unlocks, rush in. My first step in, I slip and am shoved forward by my teammates for the extraction. I'm knocked out briefly, wake up back outside cell. I'm covered in blood and teammate is wiping blood off my face shield. Contractor is hovering over me and asks me to check the seal on my mask to make sure it didn't tear. Seal is fine, doesn't even ask if I'm alright, walks away, talks to SGT. Look inside cell, covered in blood and vomit, detainee dead in the corner. Overhear contractor address one of the techs, tells them to stay out of the cell and that he was hoping we'd find him here and wouldn't have to go another block of the facility. Restart assault, and get to end of cell block, another keypad, inputs code and we go in. The room is round with a guard shack in the center of the circle room, cells align the entire room with another keypad door at the end. Some of the cells are unsecure with doors open. Vomit, blood, shit line the walls and floor. Gate shack is one-way glass, can't see inside. Hear beeping from inside, American steps out. None of us have the balls to kill him. I recognize him, one of the guys I normally relieve, but he is down here? He starts to babble, he doesn't recognize who we are behind the protective suits. Sees contractor, shuts up immediately. Contractor is waiting for us to react, I'm waiting for us to react, no one reacts. I lower my muzzle and look to Sergeant for guidance, he just nods his head no. Contractor asks to speak with Sergeant and 2 other techs, take opportunity to ask guard what happened, tell him my name, he remembers me from doing changeover. Realize that 4 days ago 5 of those fuckers came up and told us there was a riot going on that the guards inside were being overwhelmed by. Said that we didn't need suits like them, that it was a precaution. They lied, we need to get out of here. Man looking into his eyes notice they are bloodshot, his skin is yellow, gums pale, and he keeps rubbing his stomach. One of my guys starts talking to him, he turns around to face him, the back of his pants are covered in black shit, as in fecal matter, matting and hardening. He passes a long-winded gasp but doesn't even break stride talking to the other guy. Pauses, looks at the ceiling abruptly, snaps his head back forward and vomits all over the guy he was speaking with. He starts to talk again like nothing happened. Arguing starts to get louder behind me between contractor and SGT. Start to step back a little bit. Shit pants guard starts telling vomit guard to take off his mask so he can see his face. Vomit guard is freaking out trying to clean his face shield while crouched on one knee. Shit pants starts stepping closer to his crouched body and reaching for his mask. What the fuck is he doing? Start yelling at him to back up and leave the other guard alone. Ignores me, throws up on guard again, still reaching for his mask, and they start to scuffle. Shit pants is screaming for him to take off his mask so he can see his face. I run up and hit shit pants with the butt of my weapon. He rolls off, gets to his knees and continues to shit and vomit himself, screaming at vomit guard to take off his mask. I start wrestling with shit pants and screaming for SGT to grab flexi cuffs. Screams are muffled because of mask. I'm on top of his chest but he still is grabbing at my mask trying to rip it off. He is biting the rubber face shield and screaming at me in between. Start freaking out. Rubber overboat kicks him in the temple. Black blood starts coming from his ears. He starts struggling more but SGT saw us fighting and ran over. Now he is flipping him over and gets the cuffs on him. He keeps squirming around, see the cuffs digging into his skin. Vomit guard runs up and we drag shit pants into an open cell and slide him in and shut the door. We and our gear are all covered in vomit, shit, and blood. Contractor says nothing to us but stares. We all nod in acknowledgement. Shit pants is still screaming, tumbling around in the cell. Contractor has all of us come to him and the techs, says bluntly, if you want to get out of here you need to listen to us. We have a ways to go and I want to stay alive, then walk off to the next keypad door. SGT yells for us to stack up. Stack up, feel slap, assault room. 5 people mulling around in center and look surprised when we enter. I fire, and so does everyone else. It's a security station, monitors, intercom system etc. Secure bodies with flexi cuffs. SGT walks to camera monitor and consults me, says we can bypass a lot of shit if contractor tells us where we are going. Agree, call over contractor. He agrees and looks over the monitors, points to facility clinic and says we need to go there so they can do their job and we can all leave. BRB gotta grab something. Facility is much bigger than expected. Contractor tells us first rooms we passed are just holding areas for new prisoners to be sorted. Emergency exit map in security room, start to plan assault. Place is built like a giant square with several hallways connecting rooms all the way to the center that makes up the largest cell block and aid station. Run rock drills using miscellaneous office supplies. Get confident we know somewhat where we are going. Start to assault the facility again, get lucky through most of it, but traces of running gunfights are evident throughout. Bloated corpses are in some of the security substations and we are out of flexi cuffs. Begin using sidearms to ensure they will not pose a threat. Get to a 3-tier block, decide that we will just assault through as quickly as possible to the other side and try not to avoid getting bogged down. Open door and start beeline. There is a security station in the center, running toward it to get past and GTFO out of that place. Door swings open and prisoner with M4 steps at and starts firing at us. America steps out next and takes up a position of cover and starts firing. Hit prisoners standing out in open, keep up suppressing fire on guard while my teammate runs down the opposite side to flank him. Tags guard. We all rush up to clear the security room. It's empty, guard is still alive, tells us they saw what we did to the other guard station and the prisoners and guards that are still alive are armed and waiting for us. Sergeant shoots him. There are only 4 of us that have a shaky understanding of the facility's layout, makes me nervous. No time to talk, run across cell block to other door to next room. Continue through several more rooms. Careful at each substation but haven't run into anyone else. Make it to clinic, secure it, then set up defensive position near entrance to protect contractors while they did whatever they were doing. They finish up and come out with a flexi-cuffed prisoner. I'm getting more anxiety over this situation. Now we have to tote around 4 people while fighting a force that knows the layout of the structure. Prisoner isn't wearing protective clothing but he doesn't look sick either. Start to understand why they need him. Begin assault through building. Have to cover new territory as at the shortest point to one of the exits that is an entrance that leads to another facility where we can link up with the fire team from our original assault force on the surface. Start running through rooms trying to be cautious but trying to GTFO as quickly as possible. Run into what looks like an ambush. The 3 who set it up are barricade behind random furniture and bodies litter the kill zone. Start running through the bodies trying to keep weapon level with barricades. Just to the point where I'm running on top of bodies. Reach barricade, all dead, still have weapons, looks like they succumb to whatever everyone is sick with. Vomit, shit, black blood, something new with these guys. They look like their abdomens tore open from the pressure of the fluids inside of them. The organs are black, summit the fluid is a deep yellow. Keep running. Getting tired, getting complacent, overheating, dehydrating, nothing we can do but keep running. Sergeant is lagging behind us, we cover more ground and he stops and takes off his mask and throws up. I look at the contractor and he just nods his head. His skin is yellowing, aggressive looking, boils on his cheeks, has that same deep red tint to his eyes. Pulls M9, kills himself before we can even say anything. No time, start running forward again hoping to make it to that door. We have 3 more rooms to cover. Contractor calls me back and tells me to stop. I know where this is going, so I put the M4 on him and tell him I kill both of us before I let him waltz out without me and my guys. Tells me not to worry and says we need to deviate slightly to decontamination rooms. Too tired to care and he leads the way. Get to rooms and they spray the gore off the suits, sitting, waiting, for remnants of the original prisoners and guard force to kill me while I just stand there like an asshole while this thing sprays a bunch of shit on me. Nothing happens and we all rendezvous in what he called a clean room to wait on my other 3 guys to get done with their deck-in process. Start to put gear back on and not paying attention. Gunshots ring out in rapid succession. Contractor has killed the other 2 techs and has gun on me. Tells me he can get me out of there but I need to protect him when we get to the surface. Agree to it. He shuts off the deck-in and locks my guys inside to die. Has me put on one of the tech suits instead of my original gear. Takes me not to the door we fought to get to but to an elevator. Nothing seems real. Go on autopilot, and follow him. He knows the layout more than he let on in the beginning. We get Tati elevator and he takes us back to the original mock-up village that hid all this shit. Rendezvous with my original security element hoping they don't recognize me through the face mask. Hello lands and takes us across border to Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait. I'm smuggled out of the country and back into the United States. Contractor kept his word and I've kept mine. If I gave you my real name it would say I died in a mortar attack in late 2007 in southern Iraq outside of Qasr. I'll leave you with this, a clue, J376. Little background to start. I work as a topographer/tracker for a local group in Colorado and Wyoming. My job consists of surveying areas and mapping out common game trails and popular places for herds to gather for hunting and ecological purposes. When I'm out, I'm mostly on an ATV until I find a game trail, which then I map out on foot. When I'm going long distances, I stop at outposts that have been set up along the trail to refuel and rest for the night, or go to in case of hazardous weather. I've seen some things that have made me question what's out there, such as mutilated deer, bull elks torn in half, holes dug through the fresh body of animals from the inside out. While seeing things like this is unsettling, I usually shrug them off as some kind of nasty parasite or bear attack. The thing that made me wonder whether or not I was up against something much bigger didn't happen till recently while near the Wyoming/Colorado border in between outposts in the first week of December. To start, it was snowing fairly lightly, kinda spitting really. The pines stopped most of the snow falling on me while I was walking back to my ATV. While it was snowing lightly, the layer on the ground was at least a foot deep off trail, making it pretty difficult to move or be quiet while lumbering through it. I got on the ATV and drove about a half-mile up the trail, almost crossing over into Wyoming, when I noticed another trail that looked freshly made. When I got off the ATV, I noticed some small droplets of blood in the snow going down the trail, with what looked like bear prints with something dragging behind it. I grabbed my gun off the rack on the ATV and slung it over my shoulder. The trail looked fresh, but the prints and blood were starting to get covered in a layer of snowfall. While walking along the trail, I noticed something kind of weird in the middle of the bear tracks. It looked like a human foot almost, but rather elongated and thin, with only 4 toes on the end. The tracks twisted within the bear prints themselves, almost like the animal's foot spun a bit coming out of the bear track. I continued on while occasionally glancing into the track, and sure enough the prints were still there. When I go to the end in a large clearing, I stopped following the bear tracks. Something about being in this large clearing with an unknown animal was making me uneasy. I mapped it out and placed a red line over it, indicating a high predatory area. On the way back, I noticed something strange about my own boot prints. Now, I'm a pretty big guy, standing at 6 feet 2 inches with a size 13 boot, but whatever had made the tracks had a footprint significantly larger than my own. But that's not the worst part. Whatever it was, had followed my boot prints back, heading in the same direction I was. Whatever it was, it had snuck behind me and was heading towards my ATV. I shoulder my rifle and put a round in the chamber. I walked back, glancing down every so often to see if the twisted footprints were indeed still in mine. When I got back to my ATV, I noticed that the prints circled my vehicle and stopped behind it and shuffled a bit. I then noticed that my jerrycan was missing, and that thing had left a trail of gasoline down the road from where I came. I hopped on my quad to get going in the opposite direction, hoping to distance myself from whatever stole my fuel. After crossing over into Wyoming, I noticed that everything was rather still. It was still snowing, but the flakes almost seemed to be suspended in the air. Not falling, but not static either. I couldn't hear anything when my ATV was shut off, no animals, no snowfall, not even my own breathing. Almost like something had stopped all sound from existing. I found another game trail, this time a few hundred yards off the trail. I dismounted and walked towards the opening in the trees, with pristine snow covering the rocky terrain around me. All along the trail, I would catch fleeting glimpses of a shadow. Not shadows, no. Just one. Moving along the trail with me. I put it off to lack of sleep making me see things. On my way back, I got a chill up my spine. In my own boot prints were the same tracks I saw at the last trail. The same twisty human-like print, but this time, something was touching the ground in front of them. A swipe here and there, almost like whatever it was tracking me by my scent. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I reached for my sidearm, kicking myself for leaving the rifle on the ATV. I heard a ragged breath from my left. Like if you collapsed a lung on a deer. I drew and fired into the trees, striking an aspen and blowing a hole in its small frame. I saw nothing. No movement, no snowfall, no animal. I started getting the same feeling I was getting from the clearing, and ran back to my quad. Whatever had been following me, beat me there. I followed the tracks around my ATV like last time, and stopped to see what it took next. It took my rifle. My rifle. A large rifle that would require something very large to carry it off in its mouth, or something with hands and the strength to carry it. I looked a little closer at the prints, and found something I had missed every time. Inside the footprints, right where the twist ended, I noticed 4 very long appendages peeking through the twisted snow. It looked like a monkey foot, but longer and more hand-like, but not quiet enough to be human. I mounted and hit the throttle, spinning out a bit until I got traction, and went shooting down the road. I was too low on fuel to go back to a main road where I could get help, and was forced to go to my next outpost. When I arrived, the small cabin/hut-like structure looked so comforting and protective I almost cried. It had fuel for the quad, a safe place for me to sleep, and a radio for help. The sun was setting, and I was firing up the stove after starting the generator when my radio crackled and came to life. I jumped when I heard the static hiss. I ran over to the radio and requested an evac or an extra team for a safe escort. When asked why, I lied and said I was being hunted by a bear and lost my rifle on the trail. The voice on the other end scoffed, "BTU obliged. My team would be there by morning." When I hung up the radio and started to get comfy and safe, I heard a loud thump hit my door. I froze in my bed, not knowing what to do. I finally got up after debating whether or not just hide. I'm no coward, I thought. I grabbed my sidearm and walked towards the door. I peeked out the small window to see if someone or something was out there. All I saw was darkness. Stupidly, I opened the door and shouted, "If you don't leave, I'm going to kill you. You took one of my guns, but I still have the other." No response. I looked at my door to see what hit it, and only saw the remnants of a snowball. A fucking snowball. I waited to see if I could see any movement, when another snowball came flying out of the darkness to my left and hit my shoulder. "You better run, or I'm going to fucking kill you," I yelled, as I slammed the door shut and ran out to confront whatever threw the snowball. I ran towards where the ball came from, watching for prints or signs of movement. I saw something in the darkness that looked like a man had fallen, and was scrambling on the ground to get up, making that raspy breathing noise. I stopped and aimed, but saw that whatever was in front of me had continued to run on all fours at an alarming speed. Faster than I could run. I froze when I saw the black silhouette dart off into the darkness, not sure what to do. After listening and hearing nothing, no breathing, no running, I headed back to my hut. Once I got to the clearing my hut was in, I stopped. Relieved I had made it out of the woods alive. I took a deep breath and calmed myself down, and started walking towards my cabin, illuminated by the lone porch light on the deck. I looked down, trying to follow my tracks back to conserve energy, and nearly vomited. The twisted footprints were in my tracks, heading towards the cabin. I saw the trail heading back towards my cabin, each twisted footprint slamming down into my own until it got to my porch. Amidst all the snow dragged on by the thing, was my rifle and jerry can, placed neatly on the porch, leaning against the wall. The door was ask and jarred open a bit. I could have sworn I saw the leg of the thing dart in as soon as I looked at it. I wish I could say I bursted in there and shot the thing dead, but I was too frozen with fear to do anything but stand there. I wish I could say I was brave and fought the good fight, but I didn't. I crumpled onto the ground, cradling my knees until sunup. I had spent 6 hours in the darkness, waiting for whatever that thing was to come out and finish me. but it never happened. My crew found me covered in snow with my gun drawn and pointed at my cabin. They questioned me and searched the cabin. All of my food was eaten, my bed was torn up and made into a makeshift nest thing like a dog would sleep in, and the radio was destroyed, but no sign of whatever was haunting me.
B16. Be black and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. Down south cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. No, I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp and it's obvious something is weird. Air has this weird electric smell like right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together. There was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says okay. I'm going to stop Greentexting because the story is fairly long and the format is harder to write in. So we end up playing football, and dicking around. There are me, the white kid Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. 5 girls and 6 boys. We all were around 15 to 17. We ended up just dicking the day away and going back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner said he wants to run home. His family's property sits up against my uncle's, and ask if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's getting pretty dark, and one of the girls says she's going to walk with them. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail toward Tan's property. The rest of us chill and make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we has started, and this really nasty coppery smell like right after you've had a nosebleed and it's stopped. I wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic, back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction, or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing is on, and we all can smell it. All of a sudden we can hear people booking down the path toward us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girl all come running into the clearing out of breath, and they don't even break stride. They all run into the trailer right by where the fire is. We all nope the fuck out of there and get into the trailers. They end up calming down. Even Rooster is crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say fuck it and are about to go outside to get the generator out of a shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, fuck no. Lock the front door, ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure he could go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before, and then one of their pigs had come up ripped up and half eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even thought they don't usually fuck with live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed his stuff, and told his dad they would be okay without the rifle because coyotes avoid people. So they started walking back toward where we were camping. So, Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they were sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says that she hears something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they had shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them and what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty coppery ozone smell, and they say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest, backward slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking and Tan keeps going. I should have taken the fucking rifle. As they're telling the story, the smell is still super strong even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, that a kind of low gibbering had started coming from out of both sides of the wood. And they started booking it back to the trailer. The girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods to the side of them and had seen something jerking itself through the woods, and the gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from out campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track, and they had just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're at this point assuming it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin Junior starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the goat man or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking goat man and how we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time, I had never heard of goat man or any of that, but then a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a manom for a roommate and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16. So my cousin is going, the goat man's going to get in and fucking get us. The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are all fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or if it's some animal. So all of a sudden the smell just goes away. Like to this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Like usually smells fade away or get less. It just literally was there 1 second and then not the second. So after an hour, making it around 9 or 10, we've stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night. And we stay another night, and for the main part of the night nothing happens. At about 1 in the morning we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone has finished some too spooky story, I don't remember what about, the smell comes back. And it's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy the air is, and I say we should get inside. This isn't right, we should have just fucking left. We all go back inside and we're standing around, and my cousin just keep going on about how it's the goat man. And my cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up. All the while I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting in there for a while, the smell is just as strong and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats in a pack. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog. I get mine. After a while one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how the fuck do I get 2 and everybody else only got 1, and I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there were only 12 brats, if he wants more he should open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get out." She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up what the fuck is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and then I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everybody books out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friends asks us what the fuck was wrong. And I start counting us, and there's only 11 now. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin. But being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had really noticed the whole fucking time, but there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you are just dicking around having a good time you don't sweat the small shit, and you don't always keep track of certain stuff, but I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a fucking day, eating with us. And what makes it worse is, I could figure out which one because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person / the goatman. The girl kept praying to Jesus and we're all sitting outside. Eventually we get big ass sticks and go back in the cabin and there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened, and the girl says that she realized too, and that when he was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard and leaned over toward her and said something she couldn't understand. My bad, had to go to the bathroom and shit some bricks. So we are pretty much scared as fuck and we huddle together and then I fall asleep. When I wake up the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep and then half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think that we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kira, the one that the goatman had touched. Anyway, I ask her if she really thinks it was something bad and she say she just wants to go home and she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split people up and the 4 that want to go can go, and that I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin and it's my uncle's and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point, because I feel like people aren't taking the shit seriously and I don't want to be out in the woods for another night. So I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to bet the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says he's going to be back. So there are just 7 of us left. This is about 4 o'clock. At around 5 he hasn't made it back yet and we're getting extremely fucking antsy, and the only reason I stopped begging them to go back was because he went to get a gun. It's about 5:30 or so, when the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kira is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time the coppery smell has be gone, but now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them and everybody, these are the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn goatman in our midst, are laughing at me and asking did I set this up to scare them. I'm looking at them like, I am not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I ask them why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kira, she gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving, I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. And it was the fact that I thought this that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods, it was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too. And you could usually hear big ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chittering. So I step out the door and tell her to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs up into the trailer and we lock the fucking door and pull down all the shades. Except one, and put someone there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so, the guy turns to say that she's still there. And there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The bamming is super fucking loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls and the other 2 are kinda giggling with nervous laughter and me and the other 2 guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Tan, he's screaming. Let me the fucking stop fucking playing. So we go over to the door and open it and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently he had walked up to the campsite, nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl, mind you he said it was not Kira, standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing she had turned toward him with this slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing toward the camp. He said it wasn't till he was almost halfway to the trailer he had realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire and, without him even seeing her move, she had been turning, and basically inching closer. He said he just ran the rest of the way to the cabin thinking it would be open. And when he got to the door and it was locked, he turned, and it was about half the distance to the door. Q. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know there are only 6 of you in here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops in your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it has just slipped right back in. We look out the window and there is nobody out there. So we recount everyone and then, basically, I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier. And everybody says 8. I say, well, how many are here now? They all do the count and then realize there are only now 7 people in the cabin. So Tan had brought back a couple boxes of ammo and his rifle. And he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was Goat Man. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours and that in the morning we can all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified, but I at least feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them and that she's getting really scared and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her I'm not that kind of person and she says, well, how do we know the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and that Goatman just didn't kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun? So we fucking get into a huge argument about this, where me and Tan are like we could seriously be in danger because at the very least someone has been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst it's something bad in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now, and we're trying to tell her that's a no fucking go because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off at about the time that Tan's cousin shows up. At this point the sun is just barely over the horizon and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer and we whisper to Tan asking if he's sure that's his cousin and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, then walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and looks a little confused. He says, "Where's you other little buddy at?" I figured she would meet me up at the cabin, is she a little bit slow or something? And had we been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like bloody and hot pans all the way up the trail? We all fucking noped at Betamax and asked him what the fuck he's talking about. He had come down the same trail as Tan had been using and that he had come up on one of you guys' buddies, standing the middle of the trail looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions but all she did was just look at him, then she smiled at him and he said he kept walking but she couldn't seem to keep up with him and kept lagging a little behind him. He said he asked her was she hurt or something, and did she need help, and she had continued to stare. He said eventually he had been walking and had turned around a bend in the trail. When he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He had assumed she had taken some shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on. And he nopes the fuck out. Like I expected him to say we were full of shit. He was like 19, I think. But he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. He says, when she had kept trying to lag behind him it had kind weirded him the fuck out, so he tried to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked she was always lagging a little behind. And that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. He said, eventually it go really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch and he had turned and she had been right the fuck up on him and he stepped back from her. It was at this point he asked her if she was okay and if she wants him to carry her back the rest of the way, and she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point we know this shit's real unless Tan is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed so I would shit for the rest of my life. At round 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty gross blood smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin, Reese, get the fuck up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking half clawing at the door, and I shit you not there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk, and it says in this halting weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fucking stop fucking playing." It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body. One of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence, and that's some shit that I never realized until that moment, but all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. YouTube those cats. That's what the fuck it sounded like outside the door. So no, I'm in full on terror modo. And we keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around, man," and it just keeps saying, "In or let me the fuck in," for almost 15 minutes. http://www.youtube.com/watch?? V equals QFF9V27 WEO. It sounded like this almost, only not funny. Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can't imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So then the smell goes away for a while. And for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and shit. And every couple minutes it comes back into the door, and says something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning right now. Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air. And says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods right up against the river across from the trailer it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard any shit like that, and you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door, and we can hear this shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground, crawling toward the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much, that was how the rest of the night went. It literally was screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear shit moving out into the tree line. But it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us, and he had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the fucking thing in the cabin and have it kill us all then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we kill ourselves. So he just stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing. But then it would lay back down. So, the story closes pretty weak. Because from my perspective nothing happened. We woke up. And I noticed that Tan was a little jittery, and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys, to just start walking and he'd catch up. Which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a little bit up the path, and then he came running up and basically we just jogged back to his house and his cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and look in there. He said there was a window, that we were too stupid to lock and that there was no screen on it. The window was fucking up when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then getting in among us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house, and then he said it lagged to the back of the group and then looked him dead in the eyes and walked into the woods.
OK/X/. I need to talk to you about something and tell my story. I'm telling you right now, don't expect any sort of satisfying conclusion, barring a major breakthrough. Also, if updates come slowly, it's because I was told by my psychologist to take my time and get every detail I possibly can. There will be some parts written that will be more for setup than anything else, and the green texted parts will be, quite literally, flashes taken from my memory. This whole ordeal takes quite a bit of concentration, so please bear with me. When I was 8 years old, I had a gap in my memory. This gap was over a little over 12 hours and took place during a family weekend at our cabin in a state park. I could remember waking up in the cabin on our second day there, early in the morning, to go snowshoeing. Then I remember pulling into the driveway of out home later that night, with my family who were all dead silent and me feeling terrified. I had nightmares for 2 years that would wake me up, screaming. My sister did too. My parents were never mad at us. They were very understanding, and never asked what the nightmares were about. I never asked my sister about hers. I knew in my gut that we both dreamt about the cabin and our final weekend there. That's all I could remember about them. They were about the cabin, I was running, and nothing else. It got to be too much for me after 2 years, having this gap, not remembering. I finally built up the courage to ask my dad, why don't we go to the cabin anymore? I remember the look on his face, the blood had completely drained from it. He looked horrified, then angry, then confused. He asked me, you don't remember? His voice was quiet, a whisper. I just shook my head, no. He looked relieved. He put a slightly scared-looking smile on his face and said, there was a fire and it burned down. It was pretty bad and you were young and scared. Your brain must have hid the memory of it from you so you wouldn't be scared anymore. My brain can do that? Yes. Your brain can do some funny things. It's all to help you though, so don't think about it anymore. Okay. That was it? It was my dad, no reason for him to lie to me, except about Santa Claus. Of course I believed him. And I would have gone on believing him if I didn't overhear him that night. I had a TV in my room and a bedtime of 9 p.m. at the time. My sister, being 4 years older, would get to stay up later. One of my regular habits would be to watch TV after I went to bed by muting it and putting the captions on. So that night I did the same thing, and when my father thought I was asleep, I could overhear him talking to my mother and sister. I won't bother you with the whole conversation, just the important parts. He doesn't remember. Repressed probably. I told him there was a fire and not to dwell on it. If he asks any more, tell him one of our lanterns got knocked over when we were setting up dinner. I didn't sleep that night. Hard to do so when you find out your whole family is conspiring against you and you don't understand why. And at 10 years old, I was too damn afraid to confront them again. The years went by. I did my best to forget that my family was lying to me. I really was too afraid to know what happened. The nightmares kept up, but I got better at dealing with them. I stopped waking up screaming by the time I turned 11. The year I entered high school, my grandma had a stroke and my mom retired to take care of her, state trooper for 20 years, my dad was one as well and retired at 28 years. Their careers are somewhat relevant later. I started falling into depression around then. Actively thinking about killing myself. I didn't know why, I just didn't want to keep going. My parents had guns, I knew where they were, quick and painless. I almost did it in my sophomore year, but couldn't will myself to pull the trigger. I was 20 when I decided I had enough. My first girlfriend, lasted 2 years, cheated on me, broke up with me, and I didn't see a reason to go on anymore. She knew about my past attempt and history of depression, only one I ever told to that point, and got scared and called the cops on me. I was put in a psychiatric institute for a week, and was put in touch with a psychologist to help me. I'm sorry guys, I know I'm going slow enough already, but this next bit is hard. I need a few minutes. Half hour or so and I'll be back. We'll be waiting. I'll wait. Thank you. By the time I met with my psychologist, I knew I wasn't a danger to myself anymore. I had decided that I couldn't do that to my family. And it wasn't some medical professional who made me come to that decision, it was my uncle. He owns a vending company and stocks the machines. One of his clients is the psych institute I was in. He pulled me aside at lunch and begged me to do what I had to get better. He told me how my dad informed him of what happened to me, how he was sobbing uncontrollably, how until my dad got the words out he was afraid his brother was telling him that he was sick and going to die. That got to me. Not particularly relevant. but it's one of the most important moments in my life and helps show why I made some of the decisions I made after. So I looked forward to seeing a psychologist. I wanted to figure out my problems and get better so I would never even think of putting my family through that again. Doc was really nice and I opened up to him immediately. We just sort of hit it off really well. Maybe it was my eagerness, maybe it was because I felt like he genuinely wanted to help. Probably both. For 7 sessions, 1 a week for 7 weeks, I talked about my life and childhood and everything and anything I thought might be relevant and even the stuff I didn't think was. I answered his questions as best as could and he sat and listened to me. It was on the 8th week that we finally touched on my dreams, and the blocked memory of the cabin. I don't know why he waited so long. I had admitted that I had trouble sleeping due to nightmares almost all my life in my 3rd session and there wasn't a follow-up until now. Maybe he was just trying to get to know more about me, and get me more comfortable with him before he broached it. But he did. Let's talk about your nightmares. You told me you've had them consistently since you were young. What are they about? I don't know how. I can't remember them ever. Just little bits. I'm at our old cabin, I'm running. I'm scared. Nothing else. I told you about our cabin, right? Yes. You said you spent a lot of time there when you were young, sounded like you loved the place. Did something happen there? Yes. What happened? Don't know. I can't remember. My dad says there was a fire. You don't believe him? No. He lied. Why do you say that? It was then that I related to him everything you currently know. The lie my father told me, the agreement between my family to keep up the lie, and of course the total block of what happened. A blocked memory of a cabin from childhood, nightmares since, family not telling me the truth for my own good, depression years later, and a suicide attempt. I was every psychologist's wet dream, and I knew it when I saw Doc's eyes that he had written this up to one of 2 things. 1. I was molested. 2. I witnessed a murder. 3. Both. Don't think it hadn't crossed my mind. I had pretty much written that off as what happened, especially once I started unblocking pieces of that memory and parts of it fit. The more I remembered though, the more I realized that's not what happened. So don't go writing me off just yet. So this is when Doc and I got to work. He had me start keeping a dream journal and writing as much as I could about the nightmares the second I woke up. We did meditations during the session and had me practice at home. He even took me to a friend of his who was a hypnotherapist where I was told I wasn't susceptible to hypnotism, probably because I believe it's total bullshit. I threw myself at unblocking the memory with Doc's help. I was done running from it, I was done ignoring it. I even told my family that I knew the fire story was a lie, but they still wouldn't tell me a goddamn thing. My father actually almost took me off of therapy after that, which I knew was a risk, but I begged and pleaded not to. He finally relented, but still wouldn't talk about that day. At the advice of Doc, I even revisited the cabin once. I went in the summer and during the day. It was a ruin and burned to the ground. I had gotten pieces of that day back by then and I knew there was no fire and I have made the assumption that my fire came back at some point and burned it. 4 fucking years. I did all of this for 4 years, and still am. I don't have all of the memory back. Just pieces. I have filled page after page, book after book, with details of my nightmares. Repeated and repeated until finally something new would come out. And that would repeat and repeat and repeat until another new thing came up. In those same journals I would sit and write as much as I can remember after each meditative session. Doc and I don't know what happened yet, not the whole story. But we're still piecing it together. I brought up sharing the details with you guys and seeing what you thought. He was initially against it because he didn't want your judgments and theories to cloud over my memories. After a while though, he agreed to it on the condition that I don't jump on whatever you guys say. I reassured him that I have done too much work to buy into whatever explanation a group of anonymous people come up with. So here it goes. Everything I remember. As accurately as I possibly can. Morning. Wake up. Parents asleep on the bed, sister in sleeping bag next to me. Pull my snowsuit and snowshoes on. Go outside for walk through woods. Sun shining bright off the pure white snow. Get walking. Clean smell, crisp cold air, crunching of snow beneath my feet. Stick to trail, not too far. Reach tree with blue marker nailed into it, go off trail to the right. Copse of trees, little snow fort sister and I built. Go inside snow fort. Add little things to it. Fridge and storage areas. Make beds a little nicer and smoother. Good work. Start making snowballs to pelt my sister with. Feel the cold snow between my now ungloved fingers. Carefully craft the perfect snow spheres. Wrong. Something feels wrong. Bad smell. Rotting animal. Snow crunch. Think sister. Snow crunch again. Noise not coming from direction of trail or cabin. Crunch. Smell gets worse. Dead silent. No animals. Nothing. Smell. Crunch. Crawl out of snow fort. Crunch. Silence. Laugh, not me. Not laugh, but sounds like laugh. Can't breathe. Smell. Crunch. Behind me. Tum. Laugh, not me. Paralyzed. Horror, can't see it, right in front of me, don't want to see it. Blank. 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 Running. Branches hitting me, cutting cheek. Fingers ice cold. Numb. Crunch, laugh, not me, smell. Behind me. Scream. Running. Cabin. Crying, screaming, running. Cabin door open. Parents run out, sister too. Grab me, hold me. What's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong? Can't talk. Crying. Laugh, not laugh, behind me, crunch, crunch, crunch. Parents, sister, look up scream. Blank. Blank. Screaming. Yelling. Inside cabin now. Two laughs, not laughs, outside. Bang on door. Bang. Bang. Smell. Laugh. Not laugh. Screaming. Parents, guns. Click, click. Safety's off. Dad, fuck what fuck get away warning shoot you fuck. Mom, tears shouting, can't hear. Sister, screaming. Me numb. Laugh not laugh. Smell. Banging. Blank blank blank. Outside, running. Gunshots, bang bang bang. Screaming not us. Gunpowder smell. Bad smell. Angry screaming not us. Car door open. In car. Driving away fast. Parents sister me, screaming crying yelling. Me not want to look, must look. See cabin. One figure. Person, not person. Was two figures. Two persons not persons. One gone gunshots. Driving. Me paralyzed. Smell less. Angry screaming less not us. Blank. So that's my story /x/. From what I can tell there was one at first then another must have shown up either before or after we made it to the cabin. I think my parents managed to kill one of them, or at least seriously injured it since I only saw one when we were driving away and it sounded angry. I can't remember what they looked like exactly, other than they looked like people, but weren't. The exact features are lost in the blanks. They weren't people. I know that. If we were attacked by people, my parents wouldn't have been so goddamn scared. And there were both very distinguished and respectable police officers who retired with the respect of everyone they worked with. If someone attacked us, they would have reported it. Even if they killed one of them, it was self-defense. I don't know what the fuck they were, I'm still trying to remember, but I don't know if I ever will. There were 2 laughs outside the cabin. Sorry, if I didn't make the distinction that there were 2 different laughs instead of one that repeated twice. I can remember seeing 2 at some point as well, but I don't really recall when. The blanks make it tough. Maybe when my parents were shooting them. I don't know. If I get through more of the blanks I'll come back here to update. Though since it took 4 years to get that much, I wouldn't expect an update for a while. You're actually asking the same question Doc asked me once, but he was trying to get me to remember how I know there was 2 and when exactly the second one showed up. Don't think I haven't thought about it, and Doc's been encouraging another confrontation now that I know more. It's just, the way they looked when I told them I knew there was no fire. I think they're trying to forget as much as I'm trying to remember. I've already hurt them once and I don't want to hurt them again. Maybe, I don't know. As I said, I've talked with Doc about it. He told me I should get just the 4 of us in a room together and then I just lay out everything I know and watch their reactions. From there I might be able to get them to fill in the blanks, that they were there for at least. He argues that they might just pick it up and fill them in without even thinking about it. And if they all clam up, then to maybe look at questioning them one at a time. Yeah, pretty much. Remember how I mentioned the blue marker nailed to the tree? Red markers marked the trail, the blue one was put up by my dad to mark the furthest out on the trail that my sister and I were allowed to go without my parents. The snow fort wasn't far off the trail, and was clearly visible from it, and they both knew about it. Believe me, if and when I confront them again I plan on opening with me going back there. I did it before I knew as much as I do now. If I knew as much as I did, I definitely wouldn't have gone there alone and unarmed. Going there did help remove a block or 2 though. I already mentioned that, and that I wasn't susceptible to it. Those were the experts' exact words. I think they were trying to break in. There was one window to let light into the cabin. Something happened with the window during the encounter. I didn't mention it because I don't have enough of the block removed to know what happened other than the fact that something did. Doc says making assumptions is bad because it can cloud the actual memory, but I'm assuming at one point one of them broke in through it. Or maybe we climbed out of it. I don't know. If OP is still here, could tell us if they looked like this? Fuck. I don't know whether to hate you or thank you for this. The mouth. The fucking mouth. It smiled at me. It fucking smiled at me. Come to Daddy by Aphex Twin. In the video, when it was screaming at the lady, the shape of the mouth, the teeth. It's hitting something. I can see it smiling. I can see it smiling. I can see it screaming. Fuck, why can't I see past the mouth? There's something there on the edge of it. I've read plenty on SW, and while there are definite similarities, nothing struck home as a definite yes. Alright, I just called Doc after hitting on the mouth and he helped calm me down and guide me through it. If the recollection is especially strong as this one was, I freak out and can't deal with it on my own. I was able to see the mouth clearly, and now after Doc's help I was able to see what was on the edge of it. The lips. The lips were blood red. Damn, I knew going to you guys with this was a good idea. Not much of, I mean, how can there be in so short of time? I worked for 16 hours yesterday, went home, slept for about 5 hours, and now I'm back at work for 8. The breakthrough I had last night with remembering the mouth, I saw it in my dreams last night. I was able to see the teeth and remember them when I woke up. Despite the other guy not being me, he was kind of right. They were like shark's teeth. They were sharp, and in rows. 4 to 6 rows. Something like that. Unlike a shark, they were clean. Eerily clean. Just pure white like the snow. And they were all perfectly positioned. Not a single one was crooked or missing. They were perfect teeth. I just want to say that I know the model of the guns not from this memory, but because I have seen and held them at other points in my life. I can't tell you who fired, what they look like while firing, or anything like that. It's just lost to me. Doc's tried that approach before. I can tell you the number of gunshots though. There are points in my memory where can't see anything, but I can hear. And other times I can't really hear anything, it's distorted, but I can see. And then there are times when everything is blank and times when everything is distorted. Loud noise, don't know what. Gunshot X5, 2 sound from left, 3 from right behind me. Pause. Skinwalker Reservation it is. Get home late one night after working the bars. Check email and Central has me scheduled for a weekend booking in the western part of the state. Okay fine. Didn't want to clean up puke this weekend anyway. Clean up Escalade for airport pickup. 3 dudes from out west coming in. They have English names, even though they were clearly Native Americans, so let's call them Jeff, Carl, and Ryan. Arrive at airport, stand at escalator with my sign with Jeff's name on it because he's the one who set up the booking. 3 clearly native dudes come down the escalator. I'm expecting dances with wolves, eagle shadow, and split arrow for names. Nope. Jeff, Carl, and Ryan. That's fine at hen.jpg. Load their luggage that is just some canvas sacks and a big wooden trunk. Trunk is heavy as fuck. On the way up they tell native jokes, and make fun of the way we drive in Maine. Herder cars instead of horses. Now if you don't know, there's only one road that goes to the far western portion of the state of Maine. The northwestern corner of the state is literally devoid of human development, straight up Bear Grylls territory. Jeff tells me to head toward Jackman and he'll tell me where to turn off before we get there. Drive for a long time. Almost to Canadian border and he tells me to turn off at Muddy Dirt Road. Engage 4x4 mode. Escalade goes full beast mode as we head down what feels like a logging road. Sure enough I have to pull over for a logging truck to pass. Truck driver is all WTF is an Escalade doing here? Carl explains the loggers are coming into their tribe's territory and have repeatedly ignored their warnings about staying off their land. Ryan laughs. We continue up the logging road until we pass the loggers' camp. Just a bunch of trailer trash mobile homes parked in a row with a big ass generator feeding the trailers. Beer cans everywhere. Jeff sighs seeing the mess and directs me to speed up. I do, but only so much. The mud makes driving a bit difficult because of the huge logging truck ruts in the road. Escalade slides a bit around the turns and the guys think it's cool that we're drifting in a luxury SUV. Me. Not so much. We come up to a clearing that leads to a large cattle ranch style fence. Fence is maybe 10 or 12 feet high. Reminds me of an old western movie fort wall thing. Jeff tells me to stop before we get to the fence. Ryan and Carl get out and Jeff and I stay in the SUV. Ryan walks up to the wall, looks like he's talking to it. Carl stands in front of the SUV with his arms crossed and legs spread like he's a karate master trying to show off. I pick up my phone to message Central but there's no signal. Great, now I'm going to get scalped and I can't even tell anybody about it. Jeff notices me waving my phone around for signal. No signal out here. Dave. We brought a satellite phone though. You mind if I use it to let my boss know that I'm safe? Sure, we need to call our wives and tell them we made it too. You're welcome to use it after us. Thanks Jeff. No problem. Just be quiet for a while though, okay Dave? I'll let you know when it's okay to talk. Your tribe doesn't like the white devil? Something like that. Jesus, could you be more ominous? I cross my arms and wait for whatever is going to happen next. As soon as I do, the fence opens up. This part is kind of weird because the fence doesn't look like it has a hinge to open, but it opens up just wide enough for the Escalade to get through. Carl steps onto the running board and holds onto the luggage rack. Go ahead, Carl knows what he's doing. Ryan hops on just as we pass by the fence. He rides the same way Carl does. We travel onto a wagon trail, trees framing either side. I see a clearing up ahead. We drive into an old-time log cabin-looking community. Solar panels and a water wheel seem to feed the town. A stream runs by the village. Dogs and kids are running around. A bunch of people wearing flannel shirts and jeans stop and watch us drive in. Everyone is super-duper native. Jeff tells me to pull up to the cabin nearest to the entrance to their village. Carl and Ryan jump off as we come to a stop. Jeff tells me to stay in the SUV until he comes and gets me. I shrug and put the Escalade in park. Jeff, Carl, and Ryan go into the cabin. An hour goes by and they don't come out. I recline the driver's seat and put my hands behind my head. I wake up to Jeff tapping on my window. It's dark now, the radio clock says it's been about 4 hours. Goody. My back is going to love me for sleeping in the SUV. Dave, come on out. I get out of the Escalade and Jeff takes me into the cabin. The cabin is maybe a 3-bedroom. There's a young guy with short hair sitting at the dinner table. He remains stone silent as I enter. Jeff tells me to sit. Ryan and Carl are by the windows looking out toward the tree line behind the cabin. Dave, this is Ben. The young guy sits up and extends his hand to me. Nice to meet you, Dave. Same to you, Ben. I shake his hand and we talk for a bit about who I work for, and how I feel about native land rights. Ben nods to Jeff and they both get up from the table. I start to get up but Ben puts his hand on my shoulder and shakes his head. You're here for the weekend. We have strict rules about whites in our village, and I can't have you walking around. Jeff tells me you're a smoker. You have permission to leave the cabin and smoke by your truck. Other than that, you're to stay in here and wait for Monday. I look over to Jeff who shrugs. Fair enough. It's your village, and I'm just the driver. Ben nods to me as he, Jeff, Ryan, and Carl head toward the door. You're a good man, David. I trust you to obey my wishes. I give him a thumbs up and get up from the table. Ben, Ryan, Jeff, and Carl leave. Great, now I'm stuck in a cabin all weekend. The cabin has indoor plumbing, a fridge, radio, and plenty of books. No TV. Perfect. Bored out of my head, and trapped in a tinder box. I step out onto the front step for a cigarette and notice that the kids, dogs, and people are all inside. Just me and the SUV out here. I go back in and lay down in the biggest bed in the place. Well, it's not so bad. I wake up a little before dawn to the sound of coyotes howling nearby. Well, that's a fun noise. They're loud and annoying, so I go to the window to see what the problem is. I see 3 or 4 guys on horses with torches chasing the coyotes toward the loggers' camp. Well, that's weird. I figure it's them trying to chase the loggers off. Well, I'm up now. I brew myself a pot of coffee using their old-timey stovetop coffee maker and wait for the sun to come up. I step out onto the step again and have a smoke. Kids are outside lugging firewood, the dogs are gone, and the adults are milling about gathering eggs or whatever natives do. I sip my coffee and smoke. The day goes by uneventful. That night I hear the coyotes again. I get up to go the window, but it's really dark tonight, no moon I guess. Probably rain clouds. I get my phone and turn the flashlight function on. Holy fucking shitballs. I turn the flashlight on and there's a dude standing outside of my window. He's looking in at me, and the color of his eyes is gone, like his eyes are rolled back into his head. I jump back from the window and rush out of the room. I shut the door behind me and go into the bathroom where there aren't any windows. I wake up in the morning in the tub. Definitely wasn't a dream. I'm not nuts enough to sleep in the tub for the hell of it. I get up and go out for a cigarette. As I open the door, Jeff is standing there. I drop my cigarette and lighter as I back away from the door. Jeff puts his hands up and steps in. Whoa. Okay. You need to calm down. Fuck you, I do. One of your buddies was peeping Tomming me with dead guy eyes last night? Dave. It was just a precaution to make sure you weren't sneaking out. So a guy stands outside the bedroom window pretending to stare at his own brain? Jeff explains it was part of a ritual and that guy was just making sure I wasn't causing trouble. He was being an ass and rolling his eyes back to scare me. Well, fuck that guy. Jeff laughs and brews a pot of coffee for me. It tastes orgasmic. He smokes with me outside and I feel better about what happened. Ryan and Carl come to the SUV and take the big trunk out of the back. Ben stops by and apologizes for the freak out. He assures me that no harm was intended. I trade jabs with him about culture, but we end up laughing it off before parting ways. He tells me there's a thunderstorm due tonight and that I need to keep an extra pair of panties handy just in case I get scared. Har har. No kids today. All day. Just the womenfolk milling around the village. After dark I step out for a smoke, and notice a huge bonfire down by the stream. Too far away to see much of anything, but what I can see is they have a bunch of dead coyotes in the fire. Purify the land, I guess. I go in for the night. I hang a blanket over the window this time, just in case my stalker shows up. I lay down and assure myself that this is the last night of this shit. I wake up around 2 a.m., my phone's charger is cutting out, making the phone flash on and off as the power is interrupted. Kakrashi. A thunderclap brings me up out of bed. The flashing outside is like camera flashes. The brunt of the storm is upon this village. I've seen thunder before, but this shit was nuts. I get into the fridge and decide to have a couple beers to calm my nerves. It's a native brew in glass jars. I pour it into the coffee mug I've been using and turn the radio on. The radio is fuzzy, but my music and the beer calm me down. The thunder pounds on the village for another hour or so before it moves off. It gets dead quiet for about 10 minutes before I hear gunshots. I set my mug down and step to the kitchen window. I see the lightning bearing down on the loggers' camp, at least where I think that's coming from. The gunshots are coming from there too. I listen for a bit and figure they're probably chasing off the coyotes. As I turn away from the window, I hear the door handle of the cabin rattle. I pause. I feel my heart rise up into my throat. Oh fuck this, it's probably Ben coming to see if I shit myself. I open the door. It's Ben, but he's half naked, covered in tribal paint that's running down his body thanks to the rain. Hey? Ben stares at me for a long moment before turning away from the door and walking into the darkness. Jeff, Ryan, Carl, and a bunch of other guys walk by the door too, headed toward the loggers' camp. I step out onto the step, but the guy with the rolling back eyes shoves me back through the door. He leans in at me and growls. I remain still, and bring the door around to shut. He leans back away from the door and lets me shut it. I sit down with my back against the door and proceed to swallow my heart back to where it belongs. Stay put. He growls through the door before I hear his boots smack against the gravel near the step and he leaves. Fuck me. Fuck me. I fall asleep there and wake up to a knocking at my door a little after sunrise. Hey Dave, you up? It's Jeff. I crawl to my feet and open the door. You look like shit. Thanks, can we leave? I ask. Jeff tells me that he's ready and so are Carl and Ryan. I take a shower and brew coffee while they load up the SUV and say their goodbyes. When I come out of the bedroom with my suitcase, Ben is sitting at the table. Ben turns to me. Thanks for bringing them here. He gets up and leaves. $200.00 is sitting under my coffee cup. Not worth it? So not worth it? $200.00 tip, but it's so not worth it? Jeff, Carl, and Ryan are in the SUV and I load my stuff up. As we pass through the gates I see smoke pouring up from the trees where the loggers' camp was. I swallow hard. The guys joke about the women at the camp being ugly and fat. I stay quiet as we come into the loggers' camp. The trucks are gone. The generator is smoking and half melted. I slow down by one trailer that has sunk into the mud, almost tipping over. There's a black streak running from the door to the front comber of the trailer. Jeff tells me to speed up. I pause and he nods to me, confirming my wide-eyed expression. We drive a little further and a tow truck is pulling one of the logging trucks out of the ditch. It went off the road and landed on the cab. Bloody glass is everywhere, the cab of the truck is smashed in. The driver was probably crushed to death. We go around the tow truck. Once we're at the airport, Jeff, Carl, and Ryan get out and I help them with their trunk. It smells like fire now. Ashes and fire. Jeff shakes my hand and leaves. Carl and Ryan do the same. I tell the whole story to Central and they think I had too much of the peace pipe.
1988. B8. Be Mexican American, spending summer in Mexico. Dad warned me since childhood it's dangerous to be out in the fields or in graveyards alone, especially at night. Grew a childhood fear of magic being real and alive in Mexico and elsewhere. Out in the countryside and it's dark out, no electricity, only oil lamps and I didn't know how to work one, so just hanging out on the front porch in the moonlight. Hear bugs being kinda loud. Louder than usual, actually. Hear steps. More than one person. Very close. There's no way I couldn't hear them sooner, when they were farther. Look around panicking. No voices, no banter, just shuffling. Gets louder, sounds like a fucking mob. Get up and run inside, trip a few times and psyching myself out thinking I was suddenly in a horror movie and every stumble meant death. Close and lock the door. Grab fireplace poker that lie next to the doorway and run into my room. Close the door, no lock. Window facing moon, the room is pretty well lit to adjusted eyes. Facing door for a long time with poker over shoulder like a baseball bat, hear nothing. Feel slightly at ease. Walk over to bed, about to let myself fall onto it. Look out of window at last moment. A lady draped in a headscarf peering in. Land on bed, feel super vulnerable and jolt, let go of poker. She remained staring at me. She started showing her teeth. Not smiling. What the shit? A guy with a beard comes from the other side, whispering to her. Notices her staring in. Turns to window. Sees me. Starts baring his teeth too. What the fuck is wrong with these people? Too scared to shout. Everyone else in house still asleep. He lifts up his hand and starts pressing and inspecting the window, lightly banging on it. Looks like he's going to open it. What do? Holding my breath, pretty much just waiting for him to open or break the window like a pussy. Think these people are going to get in, drag me by my ankles, all the way to hell. Remember poker. Fuck common sense. Pick it up and run to the window. Smash the poker into the pane closest to the guy. Close eyes reflexively from glass and noise. Open them. Both people gone. Not a sound other than the wind getting in and crickets being loud. Lights turn on in the house. Dad and Uncle come into my room, ask why the door is closed. Ask what have I been doing. See the window. Dad starts shouting at me. Dad flips out. Ask me what was I thinking. Tell him in English that there were people outside staring at me. His eyes go wide and he shuts up. Uncle confused, no speaks English. My dad grabs me by the elbow and shouts at Uncle to gather everybody in the kitchen. Dad mutters something really quick. Uncle shouts everyone to wake up, get up, hurry up, etc. etc. Often family members, 6 end up in kitchen, The other 4, Dad plus uncle plus 2 old cousins, go out with a hunting rifle and an old service revolver, and a couple shovels. They are gone for 10 minutes, which is a super long time when trying to tell mom and other females what happened. Gossip occurs, and shit-eating aunt who likes to rile us up tells us kids it was the Lorona and her husband. La Lorona is no joke, me and young girl cousin legit scared at that point. Mom and other aunt tell her off, say that's overboard. Guys return back. Nothing. They'll look again in the morning, but nothing was stolen, no cars or tools or chickens or anything. We all decide to stay up, fuck sleeping. Coffee and bread passed around and ideas are exchanged about what that shit may have been. Thieves come up, spirits come up, again La Llorona comes up. Skinwalkers even come up. Sun comes up. The whole family goes out and checks everything. Blood outside my window, uncle missed it. My mom audibly worries. Go on with day. Nothing else happens as we stay for a few more nights, uncle and cousin and dad alternate guard duty. Except on the last night. Newspaper brought from nearest big town warns country folk about marauding bands of hyper-poor people. Break into bars and farmhouses and kill owners, take as much shit as they can carry, and leave back to somewhere in the hills. Dozen people from a couple farmhouses dead already, only a native farmhand who killed an intruder and drove himself to his town lived long enough to say what happened, but shitty doctor couldn't keep him alive. Apparently that was my dad's first and only guess as to who those people were. I asked him about it years later and asked what he told my uncle that night. MFW, he said, I saw gitanos and my uncle instantly knew what to do. I look up what gitanos are in English. Gypsies.
On phone, don't want to Greentext. Explosive detection K9 handler in U.S. Air Force. We are always alone when we are on law enforcement patrols and cake deployments. B 2011, on cake deployment at Manas Air Base, Kyrgyzstan. Been with my current dog 2 years and still working nights the whole time, never see anything out of the ordinary while working stateside. So, Manas is fairly large and most people don't see the entire base. Being K9, I have to go through a lot of perimeter checks. I'm in a SUV or truck, but the perimeter checks have to be done, on foot, alone, with my dog, an AM9 with 30 rounds. I'm halfway through deployment, been there about 4 months, pretty comfortable with everything, start wearing my body armor and 3-day pack during the walking patrols to stay in shape and get training in with my K9. Usually carry 5-foot lead, but on my mole gear I have a 30 feet retractable so my dog can pick up explosive odors in front of me, so basically we're just training for a real deployment while doing the foot patrols. There is a secluded side of base where I have to do an hour-long foot patrol or static IP op, listening post/observation post, once a night before 0400. To get to this area is about a 30 minutes drive, then I have to unlock a gate to a big construction area, empty, relock the gate, then drive another 15 minutes to another gate I have to unlock, then relock once I'm in. The area is huge, and overgrown with plants/trees and has zero light source and just a dirt path that loops around the entire area circling back to the gate. The path runs adjacent to the perimeter fence, wide enough for one person to walk through. I have to park my vehicle at the gate cause it won't fit, so I usually just do a mock explosives detection patrol around the whole thing until I get to my vehicle again. It takes about an hour, so it's perfect for what I'm supposed to do anyway. This night I get to the first gate and the light all is out of fuel, whatever, unlock gate, go inside. I drive in, relock gate, drive to next gate. Fucking, other light all is out of fuel, use headlights to illuminate lock so I can put the code in. K9 starts barking, but it's muffled since I left him in the car. He stops when I get back to the vehicle, drive in, relock, let my dog off leash to drop a deuce while I put my gear and rucksack on. Dog doesn't run off to mark anything, whatever, heel, he returns to me, I clip him to the retractable and tell him, seek, command to go ahead of me and start sniffing for explosive odor. Dog walks 5 feet and stops. WTF, main? Go asshole, and wave him forward. I want him at the full 30 feet of retractable leash in front of me. Stares at me, comes back to heel position at my left side and starts to look around, mouth closed, ears perked, nose sniffing the air. I start thinking there is a stray dog or some shit, so I lock the retractable and just start walking. Call myself into control, Kilo 8 initiate Ram 5. Radio chirps twice after I release the key, battery dying, let them know my battery is low but I have the on-call bomb cell phone if they need me. 30 minutes into patrol, dog stops and stands in front of me. He is alerting again. Great, if it's another fucking dog they're going to fight and my vehicle is 30 minutes away. Pull out cell to call control and see if a regular patrol is near the area. Cell is dead. WTF main, we charge this at the kennels all day. Whatever, no other choice, just continue. Pull out Surefire and make noise clapping and shit to scare off other dog. K9 doesn't react to me and keeps staring into the vegetation. Stop clapping, something claps back. The clapping comes from the middle of the vegetation about 50 m deep. There shouldn't be anyone else out here except for me. Challenge the vegetation. I'm SSGT and on with base police. I'm accompanied by a military working dog trained to attack. Come toward the sound of voice. Say that just in case my dog bites him I can say I gave him warning and stay out of trouble. Nothing moves. WTF main, unclip ruck and shuffle it off to the ground. Give dog, watch M command, preparatory command to be ready to bite this asshole. Step back about 10 feet, literally dragging the K9 back. He won't take his eyes off the vegetation. Start using hand commands to silently move toward where I heard the noise. Walk into area, kneel down next to K9 and let him detect for a bit. Find M, command to start tracking whoever is out there. Girl just brought up my breakfast, I'll continue after. K9 starts pulling forward, hard to move cause of the weeds and trees. After about 5 minutes find small clearing with single tree in middle. There is dead shit strewn everywhere, snake, rabbits, birds, and stray dogs. WTF main. I'm still in a woods though, so I think whoever did it can't see me. Dog's head snaps back behind us, shifts his body behind to block avenue of approach. WTF, fuck this, pull out ASP baton, adrenaline rolling. Whisper watch M command to K9. He starts growling focused. Something whispers, watch M, back to us, but it comes from behind us, in the clearing. K9 doesn't react and focuses on the original threat. Fuck this, holster ASP, pull out M9. Still thinking rationally, just think that I'm outnumbered and an ASP isn't going to cut it if there is 2 or more people. Wait, a few seconds, hear something breaking branches as it moves. K9 focuses on the noise. Dog does a complete 360 as the noise shifts in a circle around us, goes on the far side of the clearing, so I can't get a clear view from my position. Stops on the far side off the clearing after making one full circle and in the middle of making a second full circle. Staff Sergeant Anon with base police, identify yourself or I'll release the dog. Word. No response, reach down to unclip retractable and give get M command, attack. Stop, someone is aggressively whispering, watch M, watch M, watch M, over and clapping loudly at the same time, then just stops. I'm noping the fuck out after that. Go back to hand commands, and start to back up. I'm getting the fuck out of there. Stop, the branches start breaking again and start to circle around my dog team, fast, it's moving too fast for how little space there is between the trees and vegetation. I can hear larger limbs breaking, the thick limbs that shouldn't be breaking are groaning, snapping, and crashing to the ground. Something starts walking into the clearing, bipedal, looks like a tall skinny man. His movement is off, jagged, like it doesn't know how to move correctly with his joints. This happens as whatever else is fucking up the trees around me as it circles us. Then the noise stops. The guy stops moving. My eyes are trying to focus but there are no features, it just looks flat with deep ridges that look like rotting tree bark. I'm hidden in the tree lean but its face is looking directly toward me. I'm starting to get nervous as fuck and scared. Fight or flight? Motherfucking flight, nigga. I start running, my retractable keeps getting caught on shit, but I do not care and just keep running until whatever it is caught on breaks. Hard to navigate, I'm running as fast as possible, but it's hard to move and see. Trees start to thin out, so more moonlight. I can hear whatever was circling me pacing about 20 meters in front of me. I make a 90-degree turn, it arcs to get in front of me. Keep trying to break contact by randomly turning, but it starts in front no matter what. Body armor getting heavier, getting winded, slow down, fuck it, fight. Kneel, watch M, pull out Surefire and M9, depress button, batteries dead. WTF, extra batteries are in my bag by the perimeter fence, great. Dog snaps right, alerting, I shit, I'm adjacent to the clearing again. I'm on the opposite side of my original position. Tall guy is gone. Can hear rustling noises from two different points, one circles clockwise and other counterclockwise. Check watch, watch reads 0245. I started my fucking patrol at 0230, there is no way it's right. K9 starts sniffing and starts pulling me. The dog is following an erratic path, but I DGAF and let him fresh me through the weeds. Noises stop. Start going in different directions, them returning to the point I last heard them. Dog is still pulling, nose to the ground. I'm completely lost, letting him pull me wherever. I stumble out of a trend line back onto the path. My rucksack is laying there on the dirty path. Unclip K9 and drop body armor and force jog back to vehicle. K9 paces me but stops every so often to look into the vegetation. Halfway back, stop, fucking radio screams to life, scaring the shit out of me. I'm under duress, patrols are looking for me. Cell phone is ringing. I don't know WTF to say. Start walking back to vehicle again, something clicks, pull out Surefire, it works, look at watch, it's still 0245 but it's ticking. Get back to locked gate, patrol is there and his partner dismounted and is looking for me. Call him over the radio to come back. Tell them my radio died and so did cell phone. You just used your radio, you've been off the net for 2 hours, man, must have just been a dead zone or done shit. Yeah, must have. I never went through that second gate ever again. ID just call it in from the construction area. I had one of the ATV patrols grab my shit I dumped when the sun came up.
Part 1. 1975, the South Vietnamese president and many generals took all their money and fled to France. All the troops knew that they have been deceived by the politicians and gave up fighting and fled back to their homes. My father was in the jungles Nha Trang at that moment and knew that the war was lost. He assembled his men one last time to warn them of what to come. Burn all your uniforms, insignias, pictures, anything you have that may identify you as South Vietnamese soldiers. Blend in with the fleeing refugees. Not all of his men came from Saigon, so they split up and flee separately. Only one kid, who consider my father his Sufu or master, came along with him to head to Saigon. During the third night of their escape, they came upon a small friendly South Vietnamese Drat army camp in the dead of night in middle of the jungle. It was the officer reserve training corporate with their trademarked red berets. There was a few watchers awake and everyone else is lying on the ground around the campfire apparently sleeping. The kid officer there, barely looked 17, asked for their ammo, weapons, food, anything they can use to continue the fight. The kid also asked my father to remain and help them fight in their eternal struggle. Despite my father's best efforts to dissuade them from throwing their life away, they said to him, "It is already too late." Asterisk. The seriousness of these words is lost in translation. Part 2. The kid rebuffed my father and called him a coward and curses him to be totally crushed, no bones left for your children to weep over. May spirits of your dead comrades and people curse you and no longer offer you their protecting in the dark. Asterisk. My father gave up, gave him everything he had, and went to sleep since they had been doing nothing but running away. As an experienced jungle fighter, my father never fully sleep and always have his ears open. lest you want the Viet Cong to slit your throat. He swore that he could hear the kids wake up and stir about normally around their camp with pot and pans and hear them talk in distinct southern accents. The next morning he and his buddy woke up and found themselves surrounded by corpses, including the body of the kid he talked to last night. It also seems like they died a while ago, rotting corpses and all. The smell was immediately noticeable. Thinking it was just a Viet Cong night attack, he had no choice but move onward home. Part 3. Feeling that the North Vietnamese are getting too close, they doubled their pace and travels at night and as light as possible. They tried the main road and found that it was congested with civilians and made a killing field for North Vietnamese artillery. Not to mention the looting and stealing of gold, jewelry, and other crap by other soldiers deserting the front lines. Thus he decides to stay in the jungle roads. He recalled that at around 3 a.m. they happened upon a blind bend on a road in the jungle and crosses it. At that moment, a bus came roaring and stampeding towards them in total darkness like a large shadowy monster, and my father quickly dive out of the way. His buddy was not so lucky and was ran over. He died instantly as the bus chewed up his body under the wheel. While weeping for his friend, my father dragged his mangled body piece by piece to his side of the road. He said that at that moment, the insects silenced, the rustling of the leaves failed, the moon stopped dead in the sky. Then he heard laughter of children, men, and women echoing, rebounding, and resonating from jungle mocking him. He fired at the sound with his 1911, emptying it, screaming, "Have I not fought enough for you people? Take me and not him, he's too young. Take me instead. Take me." The laughters replied with complete silence. He dug a shallow grave and make a crude tombstone to make a landmark so that one day he may come back and properly lay his friend to rest. In the end, only my father made it back alive. 12 of his comrades died. To this day, he could never find his friend's final resting place. My father have a few stories, this one is what I recall most accurately for now. This story is from my father, who fought in the Vietnam War as a squad leader. Not sure how to translate his rank, but he had 12 soldiers under him as an officer who graduated from an academy. By that time, half his soldiers are barely men, just kids drafted into the war as replacement for those who have fallen.
Be me. Live in High River, Alberta. Mountains are only an hour's drive away. Me and some friends decide to go camping out in Kananaskis, near Canmore. Call them Iron Bro, Tracker Sis, and Stoner Sis. Iron Bro is a metal worker. Big guy, close to 6 feet 5 inches. Easily the strongest of us. Always carries a buck knife he forged. Tracker Sis was raised in the mountains. She knows every animal, and their every habit. Can find even the smallest traces of animals, and can track them like a damn expert. Stoner Sis is a great cook. Carries weed on her 24/7, but that is for her glaucoma. Me? I'm just some meatless fag. It's late September, so the leaves are just starting to change. Cold weather hasn't quite set in yet, so we won't be too cold. Take our truck out past Longview, heading towards Kananaskis country. Lots of trails right off the highway where we can hike. Allowed to camp anywhere there that we'd like. Choose a spot across the bank from the Highwood River. About 12 or so kilometers away from Canmore. Despite the proximity, it's really quiet. The tree line is still thick and continues like that all up the mountainside. Park the truck and grab all of our gear. Iron Bro and I carry the tents. Tracker Sis has our map and her hunting rifle, in case we find any animals. Grizzly bears are especially common this time of year. Stoner Sis has the food and our clothes. We trek for about 3 hours. Find a nice cliff face overlooking the highway below. Can easily see our truck. Nice and sheltered from the winds blowing through the peaks. Looking around our chosen base, we find some trees that have been bent. Large poplars, look like they're leaning against each other. 5 or 6 all in a bunch. What are you looking at the trees for, Anon? Iron Bro asks. He and Stoner Sis are already setting up the tents. Tell him about the way the trees are bent. Probably just left over from the snowfall last year. Didn't think much about it. Iron Bro seemed right. Tracker Sis wasn't convinced. Tells us she's seen stuff like this north of Red Deer, and over near Burnaby in British Columbia. Locals say it's just an odd phenomenon. Local First Nations say it's from the Sasquatch. Sasquatch. Get real, Stoner Sis laughs. Tracker Sis just shakes her head. She might not believe, but she respects the legends enough that she listens to the First Nations elders. I remember my grandfather talking about them. He said they were peaceful, but that you should avoid their territory if you can. We continue setting up camp. By the time we're done, it's close to dark. Gather around a bonfire and enjoy a nice quiet dinner. Lots of jokes, lots of fun. Stoner Sis offers some weed. Only Iron Bro has any. Tracker Sis wants to stay sharp in case of bears. We tie up the rest of our food high up in a tree. About 12 feet off the ground in a nearby maple. Bears won't be able to reach it. After that, we turn in for the night. Next day, get woken up by Tracker Sis. Anon, wake up. Something tried to grab the food. Hurry out as Iron Bro wakes up Stoner Sis. Sure enough, the tree with the food has some newly broken branches. What looks like claw marks higher up on the truck. Luckily the bag of food is undisturbed. Maybe it's a black bear, Iron Bro reasons. Tracker Sis agrees and says that we should try and tie it up higher tonight. Stoner Sis and myself go for some water. There's a stream not far from our clearing. We have all the gear needed to purify our water. Beaver itch is common here. Walk to the stream and start filling our larger jug we brought with us. As we do, I notice the branches in the trees. They're all broken in the same direction. I stand up to take a closer look. All the branches are about 10 feet off the ground. They all point in the same direction. Away from our campsite. Remember my grandfather's words. If you see branches broken together, the Sasquatch has marked his path. Stay the way it points, all else is their territory. Return to camp with Stoner Sis. Tell the others about the branches. Iron Bro is confused, but not worried. They're just broken sticks Anon. Tracker Sis is unconvinced. I've seen branches like that. They mean something bad. I confirm her statement, and tell them what my grandfather told me. Iron Bro is still skeptical. Stoner Sis finally speaks up. When we got the water, did you feel weird Anon? Weird how? Like someone was watching us. Think back on it. Looking at the branches, I remember the hair on my neck standing up. I remember the birds stopped singing. Birds only stop for a predator. Couldn't be us. They continued as we were there. Something else must have come. I involuntarily shiver. Something was there, Stoner Sis says again. Tracker Sis and I are now thoroughly unnerved. Iron Bro is still doubtful, but he looks more than a little nervous now. Decide to stay near camp for the night. Darkness falls again and we're around another fire. We're a little more at ease now. As we're talking, we hear a sound in the distance. Sounds like someone knocking on wood. It's echoing through the mountains, so we can't get a good idea of direction. It knocks 3 times before pausing. After a minute, the knocking happens again. We should knock back Iron Bro jokes. Tracker Sis shakes her head adamantly. Says it's a bad idea. I already stood up and grabbed a large stick that was in our woodpile. I approach the tree with the food and start knocking in return. Like the first noise, I knock 3 times in return. Wait in silence. The knocking happens again. Iron Bro laughs, and Stoner Sis has a small smile as well. I knock again. The knocks return. But this time they're joined by a scream. I've heard lots of animals before, but this was entirely unfamiliar. Elk, wolves, owls, bears, humans. This sounded like none of them. It was primal, bestial. It echoed from where the knocks came from. Tracker Sis is now very scared. I recognize that sound. Ask her what it is. She just stands slowly. That was a Sasquatch. Says she heard these calls in British Columbia. None of us quite know what to say. Then we hear the call again. It sounds more agitated, like it's expecting an answer. Should I call back? Anon, don't. Tracker Sis says seriously, it could be bad. Very bad. We hear another call. This one is close. 50 feet behind us in the bush we hear it. It's practically bellowing and it shakes right through us. Iron Bro is now incredibly scared, holding Stoner Sis protectively. Stoner Sis is halfway through her 3rd joint and is unable to comprehend anything but her own fear. Tracker Sis grabs her rifle reflexively. I back away towards them, clutching my stick. We hear the call through the mountains again. Then the thing closer to us bellows back. It's gotten closer. We can now hear it coming through the underbrush. The leaves are crunching under its feet gently. Then we can smell it. It's like a deep musk. Think wet dog meets pure testosterone, mixed with a harsh skunk. None of us know what exactly to do. It sounds big and all we have is a single gun, 1 buck knife, our hand axe, and a stick. Whatever this is, probably wouldn't feel any of that. The movement stops and we hold our breath. It's now only 10 feet away. Just outside the light of our fire, just inside the bush. For a moment silence. Then the calling in the distance starts again. This one is longer, more purposeful. Like it was summoning something. The thing across from us bellows back again, but now it's stamping the ground. It pounds the ground with its feet and hands, before shaking the trees. We wait for the worst. Then it starts walking away. We wait and listen to see if it comes back. After about 20 minutes, we hastily retreat inside our tents. Morning couldn't come fast enough. None of us slept at all. None of us dared to. Next morning, I'm up first. I go and check out our campsite. The food is still undisturbed, but the tree it was in was thoroughly shaken. This was a large maple. The trunk had to be 2 feet in diameter. The roots looked like they were being pulled out. They were exposed and the earth was thoroughly beaten. Tracker Sis and Iron Bro join me soon after. Stoner Sis doesn't want to leave the tent. Too scared. I don't blame her. We find no traces of anything else, other than some broken branches. And a tuft of hair. We seal that away before returning to our campsite. Decide it's no longer safe to stay here. We pack up faster than I could have imagined we would and we set out back down the trail. The whole time it feels like we're being watched. Not just by one thing, but by multiple. I scan the tree line, see if I can spot anything. But I see nothing. The birds are quiet again. Once we reach out car we dive inside and drive on into Canmore. We spend the rest of our trip out there in a local motel. Anyone who asked why we left, Just gets told we saw a large grizzly. They wouldn't believe us otherwise. We headed back to High River not long after. Tracker Sis is now cautious about going into the mountains again. Iron Bro and Stoner Sis have moved in together. Their wedding is in a few months. Both now strongly believe in Sasquatch. I got in, called my grandfather when I got back. Left a message for him about what happened. He called me back immediately and sounded more scared than I could ever imagine. Says we were lucky that there was one that close and that we weren't hurt. Advises we camp in a larger group next time. Or at least bring something else to defend ourselves. We sent the hair we found to be tested. We haven't heard the results yet. All of us believe in the Sasquatch now. We all kind of want to go back. Despite how much this ordeal scared us. It would be cool to see one, you know. Sasquatches, man. Fucking Sasquatches.
Alright, this happened to me a few days ago, but it unnerved me so much that I haven't given it much thought until now, and I was immediately struck by the resemblance my encounter has with the skinwalker stories I've read here on /x/. So I figured I may as well type this shit up and see what you guys have to say about it. First and foremost, I'd like to note that I'm an introverted 23-year-old living in Ohio who's bordering on becoming a shut-in, but I have this one friend from high school who, much to her credit, hasn't given up on me yet. She's dating this guy who got her into vintage cars, and she's going through this big rockabilly phase which I don't personally care for, which is why I declined her previous invitations to attend local car shows. But this past Saturday I gave in. I'll call her E for anonymity's sake, and her boyfriend shall be J. Now, I was a little nervous getting a ride out there with them because I didn't want to get left behind for one reason or another, but I also didn't want to take my own car for fear of getting lost out in the rural parts of Ohio. It's easy to lose track of a specific vehicle in a crowd, and I'm terrible with directions, so I figured the best option was to climb in the back of Jay's old remodeled truck. We drove for what seemed like hours, and, just as I'd suspected, we ended up in what was basically the middle of nowhere. The car show was being held on a large expanse of field that was only really accessible through a thin stretch of road that looked like it was more suited for tractors than old racing cars. As we pulled up and I took in the layout of this exhibition, I was none too impressed, but I couldn't tell E that. Plus, for better or worse, I was stuck there until they were ready to go, so I had to either make the best of it or be miserable for the whole day. Skipping to the meat of the story, I'll just say that I got bored of the seemingly endless rows of cars pretty fast, and as dusk approached I was hopeful that we would soon be leaving, but my hopes were thoroughly crushed when an impromptu bonfire was assembled. Feeling exhausted at this point and wishing that I hadn't come, I took a seat on a picnic table that was situated on this block of concrete a bit away from where all the vintage cars were parked. I was bored out of my mind as I listened to the men drunkenly talk about parts and tools, as if they hadn't done enough of that in the daylight, and by chance I happened to catch some guy staring at me through the crowd. I remember being a little unnerved by the intensity of his gaze, but I brushed it off, thinking he was either going to cause trouble or he was high on shrooms. Either way, I diverted my attention elsewhere, and I sort of forgot about the guy as I thought about what I could have been doing at home on the computer in that moment. Minutes passed when I felt someone slide onto the bench beside me, and I offhandedly glanced over, expecting whoever it was to be oblivious to my presence, much like everyone else at this little shindig. But much to my surprise, the person was staring at me dead on. I jumped and reared back, more than ready to berate him for scaring the crap out of me, when it clicked in my head. This was the guy who'd been staring at me from the other side of the crowd, and just like before, he was staring so hard at me that it freaked me right the fuck out. Being who I am though, I tried to play it off. I smiled and said something like, "Hey, how's it going?" He didn't respond, only continued to stare at me, and the longer I looked at him the more I realized that something was off. Despite how intensely his eyes were locked on me, the muscles in his face seemed slack. His jaw wasn't really sitting right in his mouth, and his arms were limply sprawled across his lap like he'd just let them fall as they may when he sat down next to me and hadn't bothered to readjust them. I was really unnerved by this point, and just when I was about to excuse myself, he did something I don't think I'll ever be able to forget. Without anything else changing in his facial expression, his lips started to curl upwards. It was a slow process, and I could actually see the muscles tensing and straining in his cheeks as his lips gradually moved higher and higher until, I now realize with startling clarity, he was giving me the exact same smile I'd given him not too long ago. But it didn't stop there. They kept moving further up until I could see his gums and his lips were stretched thin and white. It was only then that I smelled it, some horrible stench like a dead dog that had crawled up straight out of hell. I didn't even bother with pleasantries as I quickly stood up and moved away from him. At the time, I thought maybe he was just some whacked out loser, but looking back on it, I see all kinds of similarities with what I've heard concerning skinwalkers. It's probably a really good thing that this thought didn't cross my mind at the time, because otherwise I don't think I could have handled what happened next. So, I went looking for my friend and her boyfriend through the crowd, intent on telling them that we had to leave and I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I finally found her and I tell her what happened. Of course she tries to say it was probably some guy who was just tripping out, and if I stay with her and Jay I should be fine. I told her that wasn't going to work for me and that I really needed to leave. I could tell that they were really disappointed, but much to my relief they gave in. They bid their farewells, though it was far from fast enough for me, and we walked across the dark field to his truck. We get in and start driving away. I actually thought I was home free in that moment, but as it turns out I seem to have really bad luck. Just as we go to pull out onto that thin road, something stumbles into the headlights. Sure, I was ready to start screaming my lungs off in the blink of an eye, but I calmed down when I saw it was a woman, until that is she lifted her head, looked straight through the windshield at me, and her lips started to slowly curl upwards. I was ready to have a panic attack at this point as I gripped the back of E's seat and I told Jay to just drive. Despite the panic that was no doubt in my voice, he didn't understand and said that he was just going to see if she was all right. He rolled down the window and stuck his head out, asking her if she was okay. Her head bobbed up and down sort of like a bobblehead's, but she didn't say anything. She was still smiling, and I watched in terror as Jay exchanged a look with E before leaning out the window again and asking her if she wanted a ride back into town, name omitted for anonymity's sake, and she nodded the same as before. Almost like most of the tendons in her neck were cut or something. I'm sure you can imagine at this point the horror racing through my veins, though I didn't understand it at the time, and then double that as you think about watching this strange person slowly walk around to the driver's side passenger door, pull the creaky door open and weakly climb in to sit next to you on the back seat. Yeah, I was ready to piss my pants. I'm actually surprised I didn't throw up from how scared I was. Well, we started driving again and I pushed myself as far into the corner as I could without ever taking my eye off her, but much to my surprise she never even looked at me. She spent the entire ride looking down at her lap, and I was seriously starting to question how long we were going to keep her in the car with us, seeing as she hadn't specified where she needed to be dropped off at. But as we were passing a house on a back road right near the city limits, she suddenly spoke. Just one word. Here. But it wasn't the English language as we know it, it was more like a croak that sounded like the word here, and it turned my blood to pure ice. Jay was confused but did pull over to let her out. Ever the gentleman, he asked if she was really okay being let out here, and she climbed out, turned to look at him in the driver's window and nodded like a damn bobblehead again. Jay and E bid their farewells, and it was only for a split second, but I swear I saw her lips start to curl upwards again, and then she spun around and seamlessly disappeared into the darkness. The two lovebirds up front agreed that the situation seemed a bit strange, and I didn't even try to tell them the truth. Mainly because I don't know what the truth was. After I was dropped off at home, I turned on every light in the house before locking myself in my room, which is how I've been sleeping since then. The entire thing just really scared the crap out of me, and now that I'm seeing the skinwalker connections, I'm even more unnerved by the memory. I haven't seen either of those people since that night, but I've only really left the house for work because I'm still really paranoid about the whole thing. Was it drugs? A coincidence? I honestly don't think I want to know.